all I ever wanted was to sing to God. He gave me that longing and then made me mute. Why? Tell me something. If God did not want me to sing to him, why implant the desire? Like a lust in my body and then deny me the talent. These are the words of the fictional character Antonio Salieri, who was a great musician on its own and was a contemporary of Mozart. It's very important for us to understand that this is a fictional character and the words are also fictional. They are the result, the consequences of art. You may say, what are you going to use art for? I mean, are we going to talk about movies? No, this is not the point here. I'm just using this movie in particular, right, just to show to you the psychology of pride. So these words happen at the very beginning of the movie Amadeus, a great masterpiece from the 1983-1984 time. And this character was portrayed by Farid Murray Abraham, who actually got an Academy Award for his interpretation of Antonio Salieri, who is shown to everyone as a tremendously envious individual. He could not, in his own mind, come to peace with himself. He could not accept the fact that Mozart was also extremely talented, an extremely talented individual. And he was constantly at odds with his reality. He persecuted Mozart. Again, we are talking about the fictional masterpiece. We're not talking about real life. We don't know if all of that is actually true. That doesn't matter. We are talking here about the motion picture, about the movie. And you might say, well, but why should I be worried about a motion picture? Well, art imitates life. And life in the spiritual, and life here in the physical realm is nothing but a bad copy of life from the spiritual realm or in the spiritual realm. So we are still good to use a masterpiece because that masterpiece, or the motion picture, was created by humans, and humans are nothing more than incarnate spirits. So it still applies. Everything we discuss about this fictional character, Antonio Salieri, still applies to our own lives. And what we see in Salieri, these few words that he says, all I ever wanted was to sing to God. He was the one who gave me that longing and then made me mute. Why? And so on. When he says that, it's at the very beginning of the movie when he's actually confessing to the priest after he tried to commit suicide. He attempted against his own life by trying to cut his throat with a shaving blade. And he was brought, this is at the end of his life, he was taken to an asylum, right, a sanatorium actually. And he is there, and then the priest comes to see him, to hear his confession, and he comes to the priest and says these things, accusing God of not giving him the talent he actually deserved. And the priest is flabbergasted, is appalled. I mean, you look at the priest's face in the movie and he's in shambles, he's in pieces. Not in peace, but in pieces, right? And the interesting thing is that this whole scene is about 30 seconds, about 28 to be honest. It's a masterpiece of interpretation, and yet it summarizes the entire movie, which is almost 2.5 hours. 2.5 hours long, are completely squeezed into 28 seconds. It doesn't mean that the rest of the movie is not worth seeing or that it's not a very good piece of art. It's a magnificent piece of art. But the psychological moment is defined there in those 28 seconds. And that's it. That is the whole story, psychologically speaking. And then we have the other things that also make it such a beautiful masterpiece. So we are now going to use these words to understand a little bit more about the psychology of pride. Why is pride important for us? Is it, actually? So maybe at the end of this lecture, we'll be able to come up with a few ideas of our own about what pride is and what it represents. This is him, the fictional character Antonio Salieri, in his late years, of course, in the movie, right? This is Farid Murray Abraham, the actor that portrayed Antonio Salieri in the movie Amadeus, 1983-1984, right? And these are his words. So now, we're going to look at them with a little bit more care. We'll go a little slowly, okay? So we'll start with all I ever wanted was to sing to God. And the very first thing that we see there is self-pity. He's feeling unappreciated, and he's adding to his own lack of appreciation or self-appreciation. He's feeling hopeless. He tried. Remember, these are the words of a man who is in the waning years of his life. It's not from a young man. Okay? He is now in his his mid-70s, I believe. So it's a lot of hopelessness because all his time is behind him. He has much less time ahead than he has behind him. So it's not that he can change, or this is how he sees it, that he cannot change the actual condition in which he finds himself. So it's a lot of hopelessness. And that hopelessness, in the same way as our friend Roy, right? Yes, read for us today, in that beautiful, long figure of speech called climax, where Francisco Xavier starts from point A, that goes to point B, then that goes to point C, and always increasing the importance of the words. All these put together lead to this one, despondence, depression. He's depressed. He sees himself at the end of his life and not accomplish what he thought he deserved. That was a legal entitlement. So in all of this, what we are seeing is that he's victimizing himself. And for those of you who are already jumping on your seats, why did I separate these two? Give me a minute. We'll get to the end of it. Right? If we keep going, we now have, he gave me that longing. And from that, what we see is the frustration and a hint of accusation. In other words, we are saying, when we say things like that, because remember, this fictional Antonio Salieri is in some ways how we behave in certain circumstances, under certain circumstances. So when we say, oh, I was given this, or I was told this, or I was asked to do this, there is frustration, no doubt. But there is also a little hint of accusation. And then made me mute. So he gives me the gift. I'm going to use the words from Antonio Salieri's speech. He gives me the gift, but then he doesn't let me do it. He doesn't let me exercise the gift. I feel betrayed. I feel betrayed. Because I have something, but I cannot use it. I have a gift, I have the ability, but I cannot exercise it. So what's the good? What good is it to have it and not be able to do anything with it? And when I said to you that when you put these two together, there is that hint of accusation, we're beginning to see a process called transference, where we recognize there is something wrong, and the moment we do that, we push the responsibility onto something or onto someone else. We transfer the responsibility of the action or the state of things to something that is outside ourselves. It can be a person, it can be a collective, it doesn't have to be a person in particular. It might be personal or collective, or it might even be two things. We are very good at doing that. We blame the weather, we blame the government, we blame the city, we blame the neighbor, we blame the relative, but we never blame ourselves. Why? But that why is very heavy. Okay? That is not just a simple why. He's beginning to get irritated. Because he's trying to rationalize the gift and the lack of opportunities or the lack of ability to exercise the gift. And he can't conciliate these two extremes in his mind. And this is my favorite. Tell me something. Oh, we all do this in so many different ways, and sometimes so subtle. We enlist. Because if I can get others to believe like me, they are enabling me. They are telling me that what I am doing is correct. They are enablers. Psychologically speaking, we call them enablers. So we all try to enlist others, because if we can, and it doesn't matter how we do it, it can be through victimization, it can be through transference, it can be through rationalization, it can even be through anger. It doesn't matter what mechanism we use. What happens is that if I can enlist someone to believe in me or to believe the same things that I do, I am vindicated. Even if I don't get what I want, misery loves company. So it's the enlisting. And we do that in so many ways. And he is doing it here as tell me something. He is attracting, he's trying to ensnare the priest that is in front of him, receiving all these words completely flabbergasted with his eyes wide open and his jaw all the way down, right? He's trying to get that priest who is in a very psychologically vulnerable position right now, and maybe, just maybe, at the end of my life, I will be mediocre, as it is portrayed in the movie, right? Again, this is the fictional character. I will be mediocre, but if I can get the priest to agree with me, God is agreeing with me that God made a mistake. After all, the priest is the representative of God. And there we go. If God did not want me to praise him with music, why implant the desire? Like a lust in my body. In other words, I'm angry. I am burning up. When he uses the words lust, implant, these words are very heavy. They are completely, they bring a lot of emotion and a lot of meaning. They are loaded. So this fictional Salieri is very upset. And upset with nobody else but God himself. And then he denies me the talent. Okay, he gives me everything, but he doesn't let me exercise. So now I'm not hinting anymore. I am blaming. I am accusing. I'm not being subtle anymore. And like the passage that was read today, actually that was pretty good. There was that climax, right? We started with ill will, and it festered, got bigger, got disastrous, catastrophic, and we ended up losing an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to improve. It's the same thing here. We see the same climax. We start very humble, self-pity, almost sheep-like, and we end up in wolf's clothing. Okay? All right. If we now look at this is what we do, what we feel, that's personal. These are the projection mechanisms, and these are the projections, and these are the mechanisms. So these are the consequences or results of the mechanism, which we call projection. We project betrayal, deception by transferring the blame, right? We project the blame here also by accusing someone. The difference between here and here is just a degree with which we go about these things. right? And the very first thing we think about when we see the movie, when we talk about is, oh my goodness, he's a very envious person. He's the, what is it, the green-eyed monster, right? The personification, the incarnation of the green-eyed monster. But truth be told, well, it is envy. It is uncontrolled, unrestrained envy. But if we look at it from the point of view of envy, what we are saying is basically how shallow we all are. And we are shallow because we have to rely on these senses to gather information from the outside. And these senses cannot go deeper than the skin. I cannot see through this wall. I cannot see through any one of you. So we then tend to transfer the physical, the mechanistic way of gathering information also to the way we look at things. And we stop at envy. But the truth is, something fuels envy. You see the fire. You see the bonfire. What is burning? And these are the logs. Or this is the log. And this is what we are going to talk about. Pride. And we hopefully will have a better idea of what it is, what it entails. And that's the look he gave at one of Mozart's presentation. Again, this is the movie, all right? Just to let you know how easy it is for us. Only one picture and you can tell pretty much everything. Just look at his eyes, and you will see that it is uncontrollable envy, unrestrainable envy, which is being fueled by his pride. Let's see how. Okay? So now we're going to forget about the movie. The movie was just to make sure that you were not, asleep. Now that I've caught your attention, we're going to be talking about pride. And hopefully we'll be addressing these questions. What is it? What is pride? Where does pride come from? Is pride part of the creation? If it is it a design flaw? What is the driving force behind it? What fuels pride? We saw that envy is fueled by pride. Now we ask ourselves, what fuels pride? And we have to get to a place where that is elemental. Elemental in the sense that we can't divide it anymore. All right? Is pride necessarily evil? Is it powerful? So if it is evil or not, how powerful is pride? Should pride be completely uprooted, eliminated, extirpated? Right? Should we destroy pride from ourselves? And what is the impact of pride on both our moral and intellectual growth? So these are very heavy questions, very important ones, and we are going to look at them slowly, step by step. I will start with what pride is and where it comes from. And to be able to address this, you will actually see that I will not answer to you right away. You will have to go through the entire lecture to get a feeling for the first question. And yet I placed it right there. And the reason why I placed it at the beginning, even though I'm not going to tell you at the beginning of the lecture what it is, what the answer is because of this problem. I don't mean Michelangelo. I don't mean the Sistine Chapel, the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. And I don't mean art. I mean this. We are so proud, so arrogant, that we say in one sentence that we were created in the image of God, but we draw God in our image. You see the flipping? The difference? We say that we were created in the image of God. But when we draw God in the same way we would draw ourselves. And then you might try to justify it brilliantly, very, very academically, scholastically. Well, we cannot draw what we don't understand. Then don't draw it. Okay? But then we wouldn't have this beautiful ceiling to look at and a reason to visit, another country, in this case, Italy, right? So, this is one of our problems. The other but it's not exactly whether we are in the image of God or God is in our image. But basically, this. We think that we were put together like this, ready-made. We were never the flour, we are never the eggs, we are never the milk, we were the cake, with the candles already burning on top of it. Right? We don't see ourselves the way we truly were put together. Simple and ignorant, and way different than this. Male, female, it's not even human form. This is what we have to start changing in our minds, especially when we study Spiritism. As I sit and I watch people ask questions when we do the study groups, okay? Spiritism, in Spiritism, you always realize one thing. It doesn't matter, most of the questions could be answered in a much better way, a much more fulfilling answer, if people would break away from this idea that we were put together as a human form, or in a human form. We need to understand how our beginnings were, that it was very, very different from this. This is the last stage. We don't even know what is ahead of us. But this is the very, very last stage. It's the stage that has been with us for what? Well, all right, just to round it off, 500,000 years. The planet itself has 4.5 billion. All right? So we are not really talking a lot of time. So we need to go before this to be able to understand pride a little bit. So let us have a quick look at the model of the creation. In the same way that I like to move your minds away from that idea, I would also like to pound on you two other aspects. One is the model of the creation that we currently have, all right? And the other thing is how we evolved. We have the creator, and we have creation. I will not let any mathematician have a field day with me. I will not put this box inside of this one, because then the creator is contained by the creation, which means the creation is bigger than the creator. But I cannot put the creation inside of the creator, because then how do I say one is different than the other? So right now, give me a minute. I will leave a little sleeve of light between the two. Actually, there's nothing outside, because this is everything we know, and this is everything we don't understand. So there's nothing there. But we'll see if we can bridge that little gap there. We divide the creation. We divide. It's a model. You see that word over there? A model. Much like the Big Bang that we discussed about a month ago, it is a model. Is it true? Is it correct? I don't know. Right now, it is helping us solve a lot of questions and answer a lot of questions. Solve a lot of problems, answer a lot of questions. So we'll stick to it. The moment that we figure out it's no longer useful, we'll either adapt or toss it and replace it by something better. So we divide the model into the spiritual principle side and the universal cosmic fluid side. There is no half and half here. It's not 50%, 50%. We just say that there are two things there, forces, energies, objects. I really don't know, because we don't know what they are. But we know one thing. According to this model, the universal cosmic fluid gives rise to the material principle. And from the material principle, I have everything that I interact with. Matter, antimatter, dark matter, energy, dark energy, and why not everything that I don't know as well. That is material in principle, in its essence. Okay? We put here the universe we understand, the universe we can grasp, the universe we can measure. Over there, we put the spirit, and the same way, there must be something else. I don't think we know everything already. So let us put a box there for everything we don't know. Leave it there. Good. What is important for us to understand is that the spirit derives from the spiritual principle. Matter derives from the material principle, which is from the universal cosmic fluid. So now let us just clear this. Let's make it a little simpler, all right? We have the spiritual principle giving rise to the spirit. We have the universal cosmic fluid, also abbreviated as UCF, all right, as the originator of the material principle, which in turn gives rise to matter. And there, matter, energy, everything is in that box. So we don't have to worry about too many boxes. We'll not cloud, not confuse the picture. Matter will give rise to inanimate matter. Okay? Give me a minute. There is a reason why I put two boxes there. This inanimate matter is the same as this inanimate matter. But something's going to happen to this one. And this is what happens. Also, originating from the universal cosmic fluid, we have the vital principle. And the vital principle, when it interacts with matter, creates what we call animated matter. So animated matter is inanimate matter with vital principle, which then makes the matter animated. Good? So you see, now we have matter giving rise to inanimate matter, and when this matter interacts with the vital principle, it gives rise to animated matter. I'll put it back there so you remember where it came from. It is from this animated matter that we create our perispirits and our physical bodies, which is what we have. We are spirits. I don't have a spirit. I am a spirit. I have a perispirit or spiritual body, and I have a physical body when I'm here as an incarnate being during a reincarnation process. So the spirit will interact with animated matter, and from this interaction with animated matter, we are going to have ourselves at this level, at this moment, which is a triad: spirit, perispirit, physical body. Good? So just to remind you, the spirit interacts with animated matter to create the triad: spirit, perispirit, physical body. Be very careful. Don't look at these boxes or these little ovalated rectangles as containers, all right? The spirit is not contained on some. This is just a representation. Don't try to read too much into it. When the three are together associated, so when I am associated with my perispirit and my physical body, I am a triad. And I am here in the physical realm as an incarnate being. As I pass away, I die, my physical body dies, I still have a perispirit. So I go from a triad state to a dyad, 2. From 3 to 2. And this is when we are inhabiting the spiritual realm, spiritual world, whatever you prefer to call it. Do not confuse the spiritual realm, spiritual world, with spiritual principle. All right? So from this dyad, I can come back, I can reincarnate, so I get another physical body, and I go back to triad. That physical body expires after a while. I die, or my physical body dies, right? I go back from triad to dyad. And this we keep repeating over and over again, and this is how we evolve. Okay? So, as we evolve, as we develop ourselves morally and intellectually, look here, we are this triad, right? The physical body becomes less and less dense, becomes more and more perfected. So does the perispirit. It also becomes more and more developed, evolved. And it keeps going. And the spirit is always expanding. Myself, I am always expanding. To a point where I need very little reincarnation processes, and my physical body in those reincarnation processes are going to be completely different from this one. It will still be made of matter, it will still be in the physical realm, but not as coarse as the one we currently have. And eventually, I will evolve to a point where I will no longer have any need for a reincarnation process. And I will be only spirit with fraction of a perispirit, with a sliver of a perispirit. All right? And I can continue to evolve, so to such an extent that I may not even discriminate anymore where the spirit actually ends and that sliver, that minute amount of perispirit is. See that I kept the color from animated matter, this little sliver of red and orange here at the very end, but I didn't even label it. This is the state of the perfected spirit. Not perfect spirit, perfected, because that spirit gained that perfection by his own merit, by his own efforts, its own efforts, his or her, okay? His or hers. And then, when I reach the point of perfected spirit, I can do something more useful. I can bridge the gap between creator and creation. And I become what André Luiz describes in the book Evolution in Two Worlds, co-creators in a minor scale. Co-creators in a minor scale because André Luiz is being very careful to tell us that as perfected spirits, we can create, but what we create is still not eternal because only the creator can create eternal things. So it's in a minor scale, not at the same scale, not in a major scale. But we bridge the gap, right? So why is all this important? It is important because it already gives us an idea of how much progress we have already done and how much there is still to be or to come. Don't ask me if we are in the middle of the journey, if we're a third in or a third to go, because we don't know. To be able to answer that, you need to know what the end is. The same way that you can only say that you have half a tank of gas if you know what no gas in the tank is and what a full tank is. If you have a tank with 40 gallons and you have 20, you have half a tank of gas. But if you don't know where is the maximum, you cannot tell where the middle point is. So it is with our progress. We can't tell, and it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Because it's the journey that counts, not the end. And here it is again. But there is one thing I want to call your attention. I beautifully showed you all this, and I always had this box labeled with spirit. But the truth is, we don't start as spirit. We start as a monad. You might be asking yourselves, why didn't you put another balloon at the beginning when you showed everything that came from the spiritual principle? Why didn't you put the monad there? Because monad and spirit are exactly the same thing, just different names. It's basically like this, is young Julio, old Julio. It's young you, old you. Monad is your old self, and spirit is your current self. Who knows? Maybe tomorrow we'll get another name. Angel, archangel, perfected spirit. And we won't call spirit only or monad. These are just names. But what is important for us to understand is that we start as a monad. And the monad also has a pair something, which will be a perimonad. Or a perimonad, sorry, not per, perimonad. All right? A monad will have its corresponding physical body. All right? So everything that we see here for the spirit, it's the same for the monad. You just substitute the word spirit for monad. Monad for the word spirit. So here would be monad, here would be perimonad, and physical body of the monad. And the monads will also have a triad and a dyad. A triad and a dyad. From one reincarnation process to another. All right, it seems that we've gone way astray from the topic, right? Why are we talking about this? What is its relevance, actually, with respect to pride? Well, because now we have this question. If pride is a part of the creation, then it's a design flaw, correct? But if there is a design flaw, the creation is flawed. And if the creation is flawed, whoever created it, or whatever created it, cannot be perfect. Only perfect things, and only perfect things come from perfect creators, right? So if we accept pride as a design flaw in the creation, we have to revisit everything. If we put pride outside of the creation, we also have a problem, because then we have to ask, then who created or what created pride? And then if we put outside of the creation, it's outside that big box. What other box you have there besides the creator? You don't have another box. So once again, you have to revisit the model and destroy everything that we believe in and start something else. So what we are going to have to admit here as a hypothesis, as a temporary hypothesis, is that pride is part of the creation and it's not a flaw, which is the first thing that already puts our hair, standing on its edge, right? So pride is part of the creation. It's engineered in the creation. It's not a flaw, it's a piece of it. So now we're going to see how pride really comes to be. Remember I spoke about the monad? This is the part this is the segue for that. This is why I needed that first part, the model of the creation. I needed to call your attention to the idea of the monad, to see if I could move your heads, your minds away from that concept that we are put together as human beings or in the human form, fully assembled and already committing all the sins, all the capital sins we are so used to hearing. So when we have our beginnings, we are not in a human form. We are not in an animal form. As a monad, we are interacting with the physicality of this world in its most basic manner, its most basic forms. As a monad, we're going to start interacting with particles, with atoms, with molecules, with compounds, with structures, aggregates. Not even life forms yet, not even a bacterium, not even a virus. We start at this point. And here is when we develop in ourselves the ideas of affinity and reactivity. This is when we understand how to get together, the idea of union, the idea of interaction, the idea of like, dislike. This is at the core of chemistry. You might think, what? Yes, that's exactly it. Do not forget that that we start in that rolling pebble in the riverbed, and we go from that all the way to an archangel. In another book, it's cited that we actually go from an atom to an archangel. Our journey goes through all the stages, because otherwise we could not say that we were born simple and ignorant. If I start anywhere down this arrow, which represents our whole progress, if I say I started here, oh, I was never a bacterium, I was never related to a chemical structure or anything, then it means that I wasn't born simple and ignorant. I was already born with something, whatever that something was. We started over here. It's very important for us to understand that we were not the particle, we were not the atom, we are not the molecule, the structure, the aggregate. In the same way that I, Julio, am not this physical body. I am using this as the artist uses a chisel to create a sculpture. As the painter uses a paintbrush, a brush, to create, a painting. Right? This is what's important for us to understand. So in the same way, I was never one of these things. I was associated as a monad, as Julio monad, I was associated to these things in order to learn, in order to create the very first approaches in interacting with others. From there, I go into chemical perception. I now not only interact, but I can evaluate with what I interact. I can give it some sort of an evaluation. You may think of it as, it's not that we develop taste. We don't even have a mouth at this at this stage, okay? But it's as if we can say bitter, salty, sugary, and so on, okay? This, peppery or spicy and all these things, this is when I start developing the chemical interactions. From here, I can now tell if the partner that is next to me belongs to the same clan, the same clade, the same species that I do. So here, I'm already at a level where I am dealing with cells. Even unicellular organisms, organisms that the entire organism is made of only one cell, like any bacterium is a unicellular organism. From here, I begin to develop signal generation. So now I no longer react or act. I actually can evaluate what I receive as a signal stimulus. And now I can also signal out. I develop the ability to signal out. So imagine that you are in an island. Here, okay? You don't know how to create fire. You don't know how to put a bonfire together. You don't know how to signal that you are there in that island alone. First, you learn how to make fire. Here would be you signaling out. You putting together a fire and sending smoke signals or even light signals with a little fire. So now here, at this level, when we start now going into pluricellular organisms or even plants, what we are developing the ability is to generate signal. And you know what a signal generation is, because when the roses start to smell kind of funny, you throw them out. And you don't buy a plant that smells badly. Those plants are generating signals. Those signals are not for us to enjoy. They're there for a reason. Nature has it for a reason. But we were, in our whole evolution here, we were going through these stages. We were putting these things together. By the time we get to the first animals, we start developing what we call reflex arcs. Now, we put 2 and 2 together. We put this one and this one together. But we also put something else called physical perception together. So here, if something happens to us, we have an immediate reaction to it. A reaction that is so fast, we call them reflex arcs, that it doesn't go through some sort of a primitive brain. So you know this, for instance, when you go to the doctors, and the doctor actually hit your patella, okay, the bone in your knee, and then your leg jerks, right? That's a reflex arc. That's the primitive in us, the primordial, the primeval in all of us. Our brains don't even realize that that has happened. It comes all the way here to our spine and back. Doesn't even take the elevator all the way up to the brain. The only way the brain actually realizes it is because the brain is looking at the leg through the eyes. Okay? Otherwise, you wouldn't even know it. If you could disconnect all the sensors on your skin, all right, you wouldn't know. And you were not looking at it, you wouldn't know that your leg had just jerked because you had, a little tool, like a gavel, just hit your patella. So these are the reflex arcs. We are building a way of interacting with the outside so we can get to instinct. And instinct is the primordial form of intelligence. It's not intelligence, but we can say loosely it's the primordial level of intelligence. At the very end here of the animal stage, there is a great change in the limbic system of our central nervous system. And the limbic system gets more refined. And with that, we are capable of doing a lot of things, including emotions, and not only producing, but also collecting and archiving memories. And here, when we reach this point, we change into something else. All this we do as a monad. Does it matter what name I give to it? No, but it's nice that we use the same nomenclature so we can all talk the same language and understand each other. If you start reading the books by André Luiz, such as Evolution in Two Worlds, you're going to see that he talks about monad quite a lot. Okay? So until this very end here, we are monads. Then something happens, and as I told you, the limbic system is improved, and at that moment, we have the birth of intelligence, of reason. And this is when we enter, when we ingress in the human form. The human form. All right? This is when we become humans. But before this, we have 2 billion years of history as monad. Compared to what we have, the amount of time we have used as monads, we are, the amount of time we have been, or we have lived as humans is nothing. It's about 2 billion years versus what? 500,000, not even that. All right? So it's nothing. It's a piece of lint in this whole thing. And from this place, we don't know what awaits us. We hear that these are the angelical beings. I don't know. But we know that the law of progress tells us that this continues on and on. So this part is when we are upgraded to spirit. This is when we call ourselves spirit, from humans onwards. Now, the very first thing we have a tendency to do is, oh, really? Wow. So when was the birthday? We always want cake. It's not like that. It's not a day. It's not that you go to bed one night as monad and you wake up the next morning as a spirit. That you are non-human and then you become human. This is a continuum. All these blur into each other. This is just a guideline for us to have an idea how things progressed. So if we truly look at this, what we'll see over there, you see, is a continuum. And at a certain point, we just stop calling ourselves monads and we call ourselves spirits. But everything that we talk about in the books, or we read from the books, with regard to the spirit, it also applies to the monads. The monads also reincarnate. The monads also have an equivalent perispirit, which we call the perimonad, for lack of a better word. Okay? The monads also have associations with physicalities, which will be different from each step or each stage here. But the point is, it is a continuous growth. And why is that important for us now? Because the moment that we have intelligence, this is crucial, the order of things. The moment that we are now capable of reasoning, we are then capable of creating choices. God does not play with dice. There aren't choices in life. We make the choices. We make the choices, and the ability to reason and create choices is the definition of free will. You don't own, you don't have free will. We say, oh, my free will here, my free will there, I have free will, I don't have free will. It's not true. You develop free will. You develop it. Free will is not a property. It's an attribute. What's the difference? An attribute you don't own. You are it. It's a part of your core, your essence, yourself. Free will Free will is not a property. You don't get to a point in this arrow here, in this time arrow, and all of a sudden, boom, you get a gift like Salieri wanted. God gave me the gift. God did not give him that gift. Free will. Free will is an attribute. We create it with our ability to reason and to make choices. So why is all this important for us? Because now we are beginning to get to the point where we can talk about the driving force behind pride. What is it that motivates pride? So, I call this the spearhead problem. And we have to go back about 500,000 years ago, 500,000 years. We are in our first humanoid forms. And one day I realized, to my astonishment, that this is what I can see in nature. It looks very similar to this. I remember, I am a human in training, a human to be. I am not the human I am today. So my reasoning abilities are not that great. I look at this and I look at this, wow, they look very similar, with one difference. One difference. But it's the difference that makes and breaks everything. This one I find, I stumble upon it in nature. This one, I put together. I sharpened it. I lapidated it. This does not exist. This is my creation. I cannot find this. I am a creator. Tiny, 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 insignificant, pusillanimous creator, but I am a creator because I created this. Therefore, I can use the word creator. Maybe I will not capitalize the C in creator, but I am the creator of this spearhead. But the moment that I do this, I see a difference. And when I see a difference, I begin to evaluate these things in different ways. My perception of my reality, of my world, will change because now I will evaluate things I can build, or things I can create, or things that I can polish, or things that I can put together, compared to things that I can just find, stumble upon, that can be dropped on me, and things like that. So I'm beginning to separate the world, my reality, into things that are different. And the reason I do that is because I start giving them different values. Be very careful when I use the word value here. Okay? I'm not talking about money or financial assets. I'm talking about values in its most in its ample form. Okay? This idea is still with us. We evaluate, we value everything that happens to us. Some of them are at this level, this primeval, primitive, prehistoric level of just looking at two things and say, hey, I can find this one I have to make, right? But it's with us. But this, today, this level of evaluation is now so primitive that it comes to us automatically, mechanically. We don't pay attention to it. If you extrapolate this by about 500,000 years, 500,000 years, you will see that we will start evaluating other things. Then we'll start evaluating things among things that are built by us, and on and on and on until we get to the world we have today. Pride is, in essence, this mechanism of evaluation of things, not necessarily gone awry or gone crazy, but it is this mechanism without boundaries. like every human enterprise, like every human work, every human masterpiece, every human endeavor, we are learning as we do them. We don't come here with a recipe, which is another thing I try to convince people. Don't get so sidetracked with this idea that we come here with a plan. There is no such a plan. Because if there were a plan, you would be a robot. You would be a mechanical being just following some guidelines. We are the ones making those choices in our lives. Remember what I just said two slides ago? Because we are the ones making the choices, making everything happen, we are learning as we go. And we are bound to every now and again have the need to reevaluate things that we had previously evaluated in one way or another. When we don't reevaluate and we keep at it, we keep stubbornly at that same value that we had before, that's when the system of evaluation derails. It's an anthropological system. It's how we were put together as human beings, how we grew from barbarism or animalism to human beings. Don't say civilized people. We are not there yet. Okay? This system, when it goes out of whack, when it's now not under restraints, it's completely uncontrolled, is what we call pride. We overvalue something. We give something too much value, and we don't want to reevaluate our position. The primitive man would be very proud of this, and perhaps would kill the next one using it just to become chieftain, because he had it, the other one didn't. He had the ability to evaluate something that the other one didn't. Today we might find that kind of a simple example, or even barbaric, killing, but that's how we evolved. We all did it, all of us. In the many reincarnations we had, we did not start beautiful or put together with this. We were those hairy little beasts that we see in the Museum of Natural History. Okay? Drooling half of the time and running after beasts, or being run after by beasts. So we were either running after lunch or dinner, or we are being run after by what we consider our dinner. So we would be their dinner or lunch. So this system of evaluation, that we start with something as simple as that, if you allow it to progress, to evolve, we reach our stage today when we value everything, and when we also give too much emphasis to it. So we now ask, we figured out that pride is built into the creation, and that goes without saying, right? If pride is actually a way that we have of evaluating our surroundings and even our own choices, it's part of the creation. Otherwise, we wouldn't be part of the creation ourselves. So the question we have to answer now is if it's a necessary evil. And if it's an evil force, is it powerful? Or how powerful it is it? And here, I'm just moving it to this slide so that you don't get sidetracked by the little guy, the little Hercules there, trying to hold the world on his shoulders. But think about it this way. If we think of it as an evil thing, that pride is evil, right? Then something in us is evil, and something that was allowed in us to be evil came from the creation, which then comes from the creator. You end up getting to the creator, and once again you have the same issue. The issue of having a creator that is actually imperfect. So pride is just another tool that we have. It's our ability to evaluate our surroundings. And pride itself is just when we overuse that tool or we give it too much importance. So the consequence of this is that it's not evil. That tool of evaluating our surroundings depends on how we use it. In the same way that a knife can be used for a murder, and a knife can be used to prepare a very nice meal. Right? It's the same thing. This tool for evaluating our surroundings, this anthropological tool that we developed, is for our benefit. We would have not arrived at this point today if we had not had this tool from the very beginning. But when we let this tool control us, then we have less constructive consequences, to put mildly. So how powerful is pride? Only as powerful as we allow it to be. Because pride itself is our creation. We allow things to derail. We overemphasize things. We get over-attached to certain things. That's our job. That's our choice. And we are the ones following up on that. So it will only be as powerful as we let it be. Should we completely destroy pride? Pride seems to be very bad, right? Should it be uprooted, eliminated? Well, if I do that, I lose that ability that I have, okay, to evaluate things in my surroundings. That tool, that anthropological tool that I have been developing since day one of my human form, I lose it. So a piece of my core will be pulled away. I cannot allow that. Because if I do that, I cease to be who I am. You don't extirpate pride. You don't eliminate. You don't destroy it. You understand it, and you don't act on it. In the same way that we have so many other instincts in us. To remember that big arrow that I showed you, and I said when we got to the animals, we have instincts. We have so many instincts that we have learned to control. Why not this one as well? Granted, this one is a little more refined, a little more psychological, not so physical, but it's still an instinct. It's part of what we are, that we developed. So we have to learn not to act on it. We have to learn to control it. But you don't destroy it, because destroying it is destroying your past. And if you cut the roots of a tree, the tree dies. It doesn't matter how big the tree is or small the tree dies. That's part of what we are. It's in our making. It's in our beginnings. So we cannot just toss it. We can't have this all or none approach. It's a lot easier, right? Because then I can find something or someone to do it for me. Right? It's the motto of the modern days. I can do something about it by either getting a robot or getting a program to do it for me, or I can just get someone to do it for me. I outsource either to another person or to a person, or I outsource to a program or to a machine. No, you can't. That's your problem. My problem too. It's the problem of each one of us here. We created it, we let it derail. Now we have to put it back to control. We have to put the leash back and hold it. Make it not go too far. But we cannot destroy it, because it is a representation of our beginnings. It's our ancestry, our psychological ancestry in it. And then we ask ourselves, what's the impact on our moral and intellectual development? Well, as we were discussing before, we have pride as a primeval form of evaluating our surroundings. If we are always in that mode, being proud, re-evaluating everything and always evaluating it at a much higher price, what happens? Well, if I cannot play as well as Mozart, then it's God's fault. Not the fact that I did not study as much or that I wasn't as talented as the other. So then I decided accusing everything that moves around me, and even inanimate things that don't move most of the time. I always transfer to others my responsibilities. And by not carrying out my own responsibilities, the direct, immediate consequence is that I stop growing. And I stop time. Because I moor myself to appear in the river of life. And everybody that is trying to do something positive, constructive about themselves, with themselves, just keeps passing me by. But I am always stuck there. Oh, I wish God had given me more talent for music. Oh, I wish my music was as divine as Mozart's. Oh, I wish this. Oh, I wish that. And you keep wishing, and nothing is going to happen because the choices are ours to make. If you don't make the choices, nothing is going to make them for you. Nothing and no one. So this is why I say you stop time. You stop time because you start living that moment over and over and over again. Like Salieri did, the fictional Antonio Salieri. Instead of applying himself in the motion picture again, he just spent every possible minute to sabotage his supposed competitor, his supposed enemy, or the one he perceived as such, because he over-evaluated himself. He gave himself too much importance, and he never stopped to say, hey, maybe I am not evaluating myself properly. Maybe I should study more, or maybe I should apply myself more, maybe this or that. No. He always tried to blame something else. So he spent his life. When you watch the movie, you see he spent his life attached to that. He was great until the moment that he met his nemesis. And the funny thing is, the movie shows this very nicely, and it happens to us. It wasn't his nemesis. The other person, Mozart, couldn't care any less about him. Mozart was living his life, was worried about his compositions. But Salieri always saw in Mozart his arch enemy, his true nemesis. And stopped living, stopped composing, because he was obsessed with the idea that he was not the best. Because in his mind, in his evaluation of the reality, he deserved to be. And he was not humble enough to say, let me step back a little bit. Let me reevaluate my position. Can't I have a colleague that is as brilliant as I am? Isn't it possible? And how many times we do that? We do that at home with relatives. We do that in the office with our colleagues and bosses, and in every relationship, right? There is always an angle. That's our pride speaking. And it's a primeval form of manifestation in all of us, of evaluation of our surroundings. We don't destroy it. We don't eliminate it. We become aware of it, and we learn to curb its action. This is how we progress. Just to finalize, last thing. There is this beautiful passage in the Gospel. So it's called The Father Revealed in the Son. It's from Matthew 11, verses 25 through 30. And at that time, Jesus said, I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and learned and revealed them to little children. Yes, Father, for this is what you were pleased to do. It continues, but this is the part that is most important for us today when we're talking about pride, because it may look a little strange that God would hide things. God did not hide anything. What he's saying here is that the ones who are, this wise and learned has the idea, the ones who are proud, the ones who think themselves above the Creator, they have nothing to learn anymore. Because if you think yourself at the same level of the Creator or above, what is there outside that box that I showed you for you to learn? You'll know everything. So it's not that God himself itself is hiding anything. You have nothing to learn, or so you think. So the ones that are going to learn are the ones that can be simple, ignorant. The ones that can look at them, at their surroundings and say, wow, there's so much I don't understand. I wish I could understand them. Let me make the effort to try. Let me get one point and see if I can follow it. And God is not going to hide the answers. But if you already think, oh yeah, this is it. I know everything about pride now. I can go away. I've given this lecture. I can move away. I don't have any problems with pride. So if that's the case, what do I have to learn? I myself am the personification of the lecture. The same way you'll see the lectures, oh, now I know everything about pride. Really? We are still learning. So those who keep an open mind, those who see nature with the responsibility of the adult, actually, it's more like we should see the world around us with the eyes, with the naive eyes of a child, with the eagerness of the adolescent or the young adult, and the maturity of the adult or the person in his or her senior years. Because the naivete of the child allows us always to keep the eyes open. The strength of youth allows us to pursue the answers. And the maturity allows us to curb the instinctive parts in all of us and to truly go and find what is very important, very constructive for us to have, to understand, to learn. So this is what I had to tell you about pride. I just want to make one last comment. There are people that like to split hairs. They do nothing but split hairs. And we go about, oh, satisfaction is no pride. Satisfaction is positive pride. Or satisfaction is constructive pride. It's all the same thing. Satisfaction, pride, it's all coming from that system of evaluation that I told you about. You can call it satisfaction if you prefer. If you say, oh, I have satisfaction in what I do at work, that's fine. I'm not going to be mad at one term or another. It's not this. But you have to understand that both satisfaction and pride are one and the same thing. They both come from the same principle, this principle of evaluating our surroundings. What makes one more constructive than the other is the intensity. That's all. It's the strength, but still one and the same thing. Thank you.